Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's CDM Solution Overview webinar. My name is Rose Turner. I'm the EMEA Marketing Manager at Certent and your moderator for today's presentation. Before I introduce the presenters, I would like to go over a few housekeeping details. Today's session is live and being recorded. A link to the recording and the slide deck will be sent to you in our follow-up message within 24 hours of the presentation. Since we are live, we would like to keep the session as interactive as possible. So if you do have any questions, please submit them to the chat box located in your webinar control panel. Simply insert the question and the comment and we will try to address it as soon as it comes in or in a follow-up after the session. We've developed a great agenda for you today and hope to fill your time with some value. I would like to welcome Oliver Fieldsend, our Director of EMEA Business Development, and Colin Bonplu, Director of EMEA Solution Engineering Disclosure Management here at Certent. Between them, they have many years of experience in the disclosure management space. Thank you both for being with us today. Over to you, Ollie.
Thanks very much, Rose, and thank you everybody for joining today. In terms of the agenda for the session, we will start by providing an introduction to Certent and the CDM reporting platform. We'll then move on to have a look at the typical report production challenges that clients face before having a look at the solution and a demonstration of the application itself. We will kind of wrap up with some key takeaways and we'll answer as many of the questions that you submit throughout the session as we can. If we don't have time for any questions, we will follow up with you directly, so please do enter those in as we move through. So our purpose is really to make complex internal, external and regulatory narrative performance report production processes easier, faster, more efficient, effective, scalable and repeatable. What I mean by narrative performance reports is really any reports that you produce where you need to combine numbers with narrative. And organisations will have a wide variety of these reports, but typical examples include things like the annual report and accounts, interims, prelims, statutory accounts, board reports, SEC filings and so on. In terms of Certent as an organisation, for those of you who don't know us, the company was founded in 2002 and so it's been around in this space for quite some time now. But last year we acquired IBM Cognos Disclosure Management, which was previously known as Clarity FSR. We acquired the technology, but also many of the people with deep product and domain expertise, including development and professional services. Clarity, which many of us in the Certent team were involved in, were pioneers in providing an application to automate the last mile in narrative report production processes, which is still for many organisations the last area of finance that remains manual and based on Microsoft Office tools. We're ranked a leader in disclosure management solutions and are a trusted partner to many, many leading organisations globally, some of which you can see highlighted here. We're a full-service organisation providing not only the software, but also implementation and ongoing customer success and support services to enable our clients to maximise the value they get out of the solution. And as I said, we have a team that have many years of deep disclosure management domain experience. Before I hand over to Colin, I just wanted to highlight a few things about the CDM platform. And a key thing to note is that it is exactly that, a reporting platform that addresses a multitude of report production processes and outputs. CDM adds value where you're producing reports that need to combine numbers and narrative, as I said before, and that you're producing on a cyclical or periodic basis. Organisations will have a raft of these types of reports, and I'm sure many of these on the screen here are familiar to you. Our customers use the platform to automate and streamline these report production processes, which include external and regulatory reports, including worldwide XBRL tagging and filing requirements, as well as internal, operational and management reports, board books, CSR and sustainability reporting, and so on. This is really the last area of finance that for many companies still remains unautomated, manual, time-consuming, laborious, and fraught with risk. If you think about it, over the years, organizations have invested in systems that provide automation and control around the key processes in finance, such as ERPs, consolidation systems, budgeting, planning, forecasting tools, and BI or MI systems. But when it comes to the point where we're producing many of the most important documents a company produces, we take the data out of these systems and then we rely on manual processes in Microsoft Office. If we don't do that for other key processes in finance, then why should we do it for the last mile in narrative report production? By automating and streamlining these report production processes, CDM reduces the amount of time, effort, cost, and risk associated with report production and output. CDM drives economies of scale, but more importantly, risk reduction for more efficient, secure, controlled, auditable, and repeat reporting cycles. I'll now hand over to Colin to consider some of the key report production challenges that organisations face, many of which I'm sure will be familiar to you, before going on to introduce and demonstrate the solution.
Thanks very much, Ollie. So what I'd like to do is to just share with you a couple of slides. The first one depicts the challenges and problems that our customers faced before they bought CDM, and the second one shows how CDM resolves those challenges. So as you can see on that slide that's building in front of you now, these days most customers, most organisations have a wide variety of structured numerical data sources. It's relatively easy to extract that data and incorporate it, extract that data from those source systems. But the problem comes when you need to incorporate it into your narrative reports using Microsoft Office. At that point, users tread on each other's toes as they struggle to engage with both each other and the data itself. We call this process a disconnected manual process, also known as organized chaos. It relies on the professional attitudes and long hours of work by individual members of staff. There tends to be an over-reliance on email, so you're working at the pace of the slowest person, and there tends to be multiple checking processes that go on throughout the cycle. This is exacerbated when you start adding the number of reports to the cycle, and they all need to be completed at the same time. So we can see some examples over here: annual report, press release, analyst deck, use-wise submissions, and SEC filings. Conceivably, one organisation might be compiling all of those reports at the same time. So when it comes down to individual challenges, we have the disconnected manual process, but we also have the situation where numbers not only have to be integrated with charts and tables, but also the narrative itself. So for number changes over here on the left-hand side, every instance of that number has to change in every report wherever it currently resides at the moment. We also have a situation where when one part of a report may not tie out to another part of the report, so there's data validation issues, and two people may have problems tracking low-level changes even though they're looking at the same part of the report. At a higher level, at a report level itself, version control nightmares can lead to a lack of confidence both in the output, but more importantly in the process itself. And compressed deadlines, late nights, and dissatisfied staff lead to a lot of errors and a lot of arguments. Review processes can be long and tedious, and at the end of the cycle you probably have to engage in a couple of full document forensic reviews, which means you've got highly paid people performing low-value tasks. There's no process transparency. Some broken processes may remain hidden for years. When it comes to internal reporting, there can be little document uniformity, and there may be a situation where finance end up writing commentary because there's no business buy-in from the departments. Even if the departments do buy in, they might not be writing what you would expect them to write. They may write what they think the board wants to hear. Overall, the process itself is simply unsustainable as your business grows and changes. So CDM removes the disconnected manual process out of the middle of this diagram. So let's have a look at our solution now. So we have the same structured data sources. Note that you can also export maybe trial balances in Excel format from your general ledgers. You don't have to have these other sorts of data sources here. You can also incorporate compliance checklists from your auditors or benchmark analysis, research analysis from Certent disclosure net. Doesn't matter what your sources are, they can all be dynamically linked to a single Certent application. At which point users can import their existing Word, Excel and PowerPoint files. And those files can be harmonized and standardized by users who can collaborate in the construction of a single document before sign-off. I mentioned a little earlier that you may wish to incorporate compliance checklists into your application. Well, CDM itself has its own compliance functionality. So you could, for example, layer in functionality that allows you to both reference and record evidence against accounting standards. You can ensure that you've complied with corporate governance, such as your stock exchange listing rules. And you can also ensure that you comply with regulatory directives. There are specific components within the solution for delivering European directives such as the EBA and IOPA, and of course soon the ESMA ESEF directive. Overall, however, the solution allows you to manage risk by introducing internal document controls that share a single version of the truth across your cloud reporting platform. Once you have the data all in one application, you can then export it in different output formats for different users across a whole range of reports. So in summary, you're still using a familiar Microsoft Office environment, so training, implementation and maintenance costs are low. You've got strong secure access controls, so users can only see what they're meant to see. You can set up your own submission, review and approval processes, and users can collaborate and they can add their own sidebar commentary while they're producing documents. You can introduce simple guidance such as document construction instructions or things like timetables and deadlines. Audit trails let you see who did what and when, and validation rules tie out one part of the document to the other. You're generating a single version of the truth, so when the number does change over here, every instance of that number does change in every single report, in every single format. And you can take snapshots of the document any one time in order to produce version controls. You can track changes between snapshots. The solution is available on-premise or on cloud, and report sections can be shared between different documents. The classic example of that being an annual report and accounts 20F for external reporting, but also business unit reporting within the world of internal document construction. Last but not least, documents can be rolled forward and cascaded, and I'll show you the roll forward process at the end of the demo. So now I'm going to move into the software itself. I've logged on to CDM as an administrator, which takes me to the central administration control panel. You can see up here at the top we've got the facility to engage with dashboards, so you can manage processes. You can introduce your own report hierarchies, so external reports may be by legal entity. Internal reports may be for customer service reports, it might be by call centre. For logistics reports, it might be by warehouse. When it comes to security, you can add users, include them in groups, and then assign groups to documents and parts of documents. Interacting with external data sources is very easy. It's a simple three-step process. You set up your data source, you query your data source, and then you insert the query result in your report. You can notify users when they go through their workflow chains, workflow tasks, workflow activities, and there's an ability to load up your auditor checklist into the resources section. You can engage in XBRL filing and also XBRL tagging as well. So to begin with, let's have a quick look at a dashboard, and then we'll move in and have a look at a variety of different reports. I'll then show you some components within the solution. I'll show you a Word object and an Excel object, and then we'll round out the demonstration with a roll forward of an internal report. So if I go to my home menu now, you can see we have a dashboard here. If I click on the top drop down, you can see that you can have a dashboard for however many reports you're actually monitoring. This particular report is a tour operator. We have some header information here, so we can see how many days we've got left before the report is due. And over here on the right-hand side, at a glance, you can see how well the process is proceeding. The slices apply relate to obviously the items on the legend, which in turn relate to the different workflow states. So if we have a look at the bottom of our screen here, you can see individual sections within the document. If I sort by workflow status and drag down, you can see that we have which parts of the document have not actually been started yet. So this gives you the transparency that you've lacked before. Here you can see we have Excel objects, PowerPoint objects, and Word objects. So this is how you would monitor a single report. Here you can see how you can monitor a report suite. So in this particular instance, we've created a set of model accounts, a master document, and we've cascaded it down our business unit hierarchy. So there's 10 reports here in total. We can see how many reports each particular document administrator is looking after. And over here on the right-hand side, we can see the overall state of the report suite. Down in the detail, you can see the last time a change was made in any particular report. So again, you can start to spot bottlenecks. What we're going to do in the first instance is we're going to stick with our First Class Travellers 2018 report. So I'm going to open that up now so you can see the contents of it. And at the end of the demo, we're going to flip over to a set of management accounts. And this is one of the reports I'm going to roll forward. So let's have a look at the report now. You can see here our annual report for 2018. And this report is hierarchical in terms of how it's constructed. So you can see the different elements within the report, and you can drill down into, in this case, notes to the accounts. So I can drill down into property, plant and equipment. So you can see a Word object, an Excel object. And at the bottom here, you can see a PowerPoint object. Now, all of these objects are encrypted, they're compressed, and they're stored within the application database. So they're not stored on your desktop, and they're not stored on a shared drive anywhere. They're completely safe. So let me now just quickly generate this report for you. It's a very simple process. Here you can see the different output options that we have, Microsoft Office, PDF. For those of you that are submitting to the USPC, note that we support Edgar HTML. And also note that we support desktop publishing, so you can export a file from CDM that can be used as an import file for your desktop publishing solutions, such as Adobe InDesign. We'll see that shortly. If I open up the customized group area here, you can see the number of different reports that I'm running from a same single document structure. So in this particular instance, I'm just going to take the top one. I can save a snapshot at any point in time, so this delivers version control, and that snapshot will be archived within the solution. I'm not going to do that at the moment. I'm just quickly going to click OK, and we can watch the report generate. You can see this bar going across here. So what the solution is doing is it's stitching together all of the individual components within the document structure in order to produce the output. If I open that up now, first thing you'll see is a validation report. So this validation report is showing the results of validation tests that you as a user or as a document administrator have entered into your solution. And this particular validation report is showing results of tests that are checking whether the balance sheet agrees to both the PPE and the debtors notes. In this particular instance, there is no discrepancy, so we see success. If there was a discrepancy, it would say 0 here, failed here, and you would see where the problem lies. Let me close this. So here's our report generated in Word. You can see here we've got obviously header information. We're using Word. We have Word table of contents. So that's generated automatically for us with page number in there. Note that CDM also includes note numbering, so if you introduce new notes, change them, reorder them, cross-references on the face of the primary financial statements will update as well. We go through the accounts, you can see some more formatting there, multi-column formatting. You can see here we have our chairman's statement with some graphics in there as well. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you. So I'd like you to refer to this particular revenue number here, 2715.3. This is obviously the last number in the sequence, a 5-year sequence. So we've got graphics there. And down here in the text, we can see we have numbers. If I were to roll this particular report forward to the following year, all of the numbers within the text would update. So 1172.2 would appear within brackets, and that would say 2018. But more to the point, all of the individual numbers on the charts would update as well. If we go through to a later page in the report, you can see in this particular instance we're looking at headcount information. You can also ensure that text actually changes as well. So if there was a year-on-year decrease, this would say decrease instead of increase. So that's what I wanted to show you in terms of how a report generates. I've got some other examples that I'll share with you now. I'll close that for you. I mentioned the fact that we can generate inline XBRL. Now, the solution allows you to tag your report once and then roll it forward. We call this tag once functionality. So you're only amending XBRL tagging on a exception basis in future years. If we have a look at some of the output here, we can see we have an XBRL instance document, which has got all of the code in it. If you look closely, you can see the numbers in there, and you can see currency references, and you can also see text. So that's one output format. That is the machine-readable output, but CDM also produces human-readable output in the format of iXBRL. So here we're looking at a web page. It's exactly the same report as we've just been looking at. You can see we have our same number there. But if you go through into the detail, you can see that we've tagged our profit and loss account. In fact, if I hover over it, you can see that the XBRL tag is embedded within the web page. And that is the definition of inline XBRL. The XBRL is embedded or in line within the web page. So let's close that down now. So that's machine code and human readable format. Close that one. If you're interested in the 20F for the US SEC filing, we have an example here. Essentially, it's sharing the majority of the content with the annual report and accounts. We get our same validation report coming through here. You can see there the heading. Let me make this look a little bit smaller. And if I go to the end, this particular report, you can see the cross-referencing between the annual report and accounts and the 20F, and then the familiar header pages there for the SEC. So both those reports and the iXBRL and the XBRL are all using exactly the same data source. If you need to export into maybe a regulatory news or newswire format, you can do that as well. So for example, I can open up here an RNS submission. Again, we've got the same number in there for revenue, but this very plain text format can be sent to maybe Thomson Reuters or Bloomberg's. And last but not least, when it comes to output formats here, in terms of Microsoft formats anyway, you can see that we can generate a preliminary press statement as we've just done, but also a market analyst presentation. So this, again, is using exactly the same data source. There's our number coming through as we did for the other output formats. I mentioned a little earlier, by the way, the fact that we can export data from CDM into, let me just here. We can export CDM data into desktop publishing. So we can export a file which we can then import into, say, Adobe InDesign. So here you can see I've imported the file, and this is the structure or part of the document structure coming through. So here's our report format, for example, and we can see current year, and we can go to an item. We can see it's 2018. So when we tag the item within CDM 2018, it then appears within Adobe InDesign as 2018. If we were to roll the report forward, or indeed change any data, we would update automatically within Adobe InDesign when we imported the new file. Last but not least, I did want to share with you one other Word output. And this is a set of management accounts. I'm not shared with you internal reports yet. Again, it's in Word. You can see this is the report for the 31st of August 2018. In a little while I'm just going to generate the September report for you. But just to share with you some of the content we've got in here, obviously we get a lot more detail than we would on an external report. You've got conditional formatting in there. You're still embedding numbers within text, remember. Here we've got some graphics. So when I roll the report forward, you'll see September numbers appearing in the graphics here, and here, and here. And if we go through, we'll see we've got a cash flow bridge will take us up to 30th of September. If we go through to the very end, when we get into the real detail, we'll see that we'll still have September data coming through at an individual account. So that's a little later. Let me close that down now, because what I wanted to do now was just to do two more things before we roll our document forward. I wanted to share with you a Word object so we can see how a user interacts with narrative, and I wanted to share with you an Excel object so you can see how a user interacts with numbers. So if I open up my Word object first, accounting policies section 1 here, lo and behold, we have Word embedded within the solution. Looks very familiar. At the moment, we've got the CDM ribbon at the top. We can change that so you can have your Word ribbon at the top. And a lot of users will actually work within CDM like this, and you wouldn't really know that they were working in anything but Word at this point. Let me take you back to the CDM area here. Now, users can interact with one another as they compile the data within the narrative within their document. Over here, you can see we've got some users that are collaborating around certain sections that are included within the report. Okay. Now, for a user to interact, the first thing they need to do is to check out the particular object, the Word object. So I'll click the checkout button here. And by doing so, they actually register the fact that they've taken ownership of this object in the audit trail. So if we have a look at the audit trail here, you can see how it's built up over time. And we can compare, in the same way as we could compare whole documents, individual parts of the document. So all we're doing here is we're using track change capabilities within Word to monitor what's moved between different states or versions in the audit trail. You can see that someone here has actually entered another piece of text. Let's close that down. You can have exactly the same capability available to you. We go to the home report. You can do that in snapshots as well. So you can compare whole reports as well. So once you've started to complete the part of the document that's been assigned to you, you can then move that document forward if you need to. You can also introduce checklists from the auditors. I mentioned those before. We can see we have accounting policy checklist here. So this has been supplied by auditor for reference purposes. And you can also manage attachments, so you can bring in audit evidence if you so wish. But when you've finished, you can then move the document onto this part of the document onto the next workflow state. So here you can see we have a very simple linear workflow diagram here. You can be very sophisticated. You can introduce decision trees if you so wish. This is a very simple one. The idea is that you click on an item, you can assign different users or groups to a particular process, part of the process, and then you can move to this particular state. And by so doing, when you check in, you'll be able to send an email to the next person in line in the queue. Okay, so that's the Word object. What I'd like to do now is to move on to an Excel object. So we're going to have a look at those headcount figures that we saw a little earlier. So if I open up my Excel object for average employees by sector, we can see the part of the document that we saw before. So if we have a look at this particular item here, you can see that, yep, I have exactly the same capability as I had before. I've got Excel embedded within the solution, and the menus flip over exactly the same way. So there's your Excel menu, and again, you can work within Excel as you always have done. I'm going to check this for the part of the report out, as I did before. And if you have a look at the individual elements in this particular Excel sheet, you notice that we've got two worksheets at the bottom there. You could import existing worksheets, so you may have as many as 50 or 100, depending on how many you currently use. The solution accepts whatever you've already using. But in essence, the way the solution works, if I click on a particular number here, you can see that it's referencing the database tab here. So the minimum number of tabs you need are two, a display tab and a database tab. If we go to cell B4, you can see there's the number there. If I try to overwrite that number, I can't. It's protected. And the reason for that is the number has been inserted from the underlying data source. So as I mentioned before, it's a very simple process to bring data into the solution. It's a three-step process. If we go to our data menu here, we can see that the data we're currently looking at has been derived from an OLAP cube. Okay, but that OLAP cube is one of many, is a source for one of many queries. So if we can click on Insert Data, you can see all of the individual queries that are available to us, as well as the individual types of data source. So we have OLAP, we have Excel files, we have relational, etc. Note that if you're doing internal reporting, you're more than likely to have a number of queries coming into the database tab. Some of the data will be financial, some may be non-financial, if you're producing KPIs, for example. And that's it. That's the way you bring the data in. We go back here, move over. You can see references to current year and prior year. If I were to roll this particular report forward, I would change in the central location the references to current year to 2019 and 2018, and then all of the data for the whole report would roll forward. So I'm going to finish up now by just going through a simple roll forward process, not on a year on year, but this time it's going to be a month on month roll forward. So if I go to my administration menu and I go to my reports area, this was the set of management accounts that we looked at earlier for August. I'm going to roll this forward so that it becomes the September report. I can update all of my header information here. I'm not going to for the sake of time. I can refresh the data after the copy. I'm going to let the report objects go to their default status, which in my particular instance is not started, and I'm going to select where I want those new management accounts to be stored. Okay, next. I can then go in and I can change my period parameters. So we saw the August report before. This is going to be the September report. So it's going to be September year to date. And my prior month is going to be not July, but August. That's all I need to do. I click next, next, and finish. And the solution is now going to generate the September report for me. It's rolling everything forward. So if I now refresh, we can see we have our new report. I open it up. Stored under 101. And generate the report. Notice that everything's not started, by the way. No one's interacted with it, but we can still generate. I'll stick with the Word version. This is the version we saw before. So the report is now generating the same way as it did before. It's stitching together all the individual elements. I'll open that up. Then we got our validation report on the new period. All successful. We can see we now have the 30th of September report here. Even things like the header information has been updated. And if we go through into the detail, we can see we now have September data in the charts. Over here we have September data coming through in the analysis. And at the end, in the real detail, we can see that our September information has come through. Okay, so that ends the demo. I'm now going to hand back to Ollie to summarise for us. Over to you, Ollie.
Thank you, Colin. That was great, and hopefully gives you all a really good high-level overview and understanding of the solution. In terms of the key process improvement takeaways, Certent automates and streamlines report production processes, as we've seen, providing more efficient, controlled, repeatable, and de-risked report production cycles. The platform services a wide range of report outputs, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, including external, regulatory, and internal reports. In terms of the key user or business benefits, CDM connects to your underlying data sources, which drives consistency of data throughout reports and across reports where the same data appears, delivering a single version of the truth. CDM enables you to continue to work in a familiar Microsoft Office environment, but with more efficient and effective collaboration in the report production process, with strong controls around access, workflow, and versions. And CDM enables better corporate communications with greater accuracy, control, timeliness, and significantly reduced risk. Thank you everyone for your time today. We hope you found the session valuable. We have had a number of questions come in, but unfortunately we've run out of time. But we will follow up with you directly to address these. So all that remains for me to say is thank you all again for your time and goodbye.